How's it going, everybody? I just wanted to do a video on how to field strip a Mossberg 935 or a Mossberg 930. Uh, they're basically essentially going to field strip the same. I'm only going to do the 935. I'm not going to field strip my 930. This is the breacher barrel version. And of course, this one is just the standard field model with the longer barrel. But yeah, they're basically essentially the same gun. I'm not sure if the receivers are the same length or not. I never bothered to mess with it or to measure it or anything like that. Excuse me. The major difference is that the 935 shoots 3.5-inch shells, or up to that, and the 930 series, they only can shoot 3-inch shells. So basically you can't really interchange the barrels, I guess, or anything like that. Because I believe it's a little different inside, and I think the back of the barrel, when you take the barrel off, I think it's a little bit longer on the other one, which is the 935. So I'm pretty sure, I never really actually compared it. So basically you can't really interchange the barrel, but that's the only two difference on the guns. Basically, for the most part, is one could shoot a little bit longer shell, but other than that, that's pretty much about it. So in order to field strip one, they're very, very simple. The main thing, of course, like any firearm, is make sure it's unloaded, which it is. And in this case, you're going to want to release the bolt, let it go forward, and then you don't really have to dry fire it or nothing. The only tools you pretty much are going to need is just a 1/8 inch punch, preferably a brass punch. But me, it doesn't matter if I scratch up the takedown pins. I mean, one thing I did notice, the 935 on the trigger group, when you have to take these pins out, it does have two pins here, and I just noticed that the 930 only has one. So that's one thing to note. So obviously the trigger packs are different too, a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, just go ahead and make sure it's unloaded, let the bolt go forward, and then just simply, like most shotguns, just undo the cap here. And like I said, this is just a field strip, just to show you how to clean it. I'm not going to show you how to take the stock assembly apart to put the different like plastic adapters in here for the length of pull or anything like that. I'm not going to mess with something like that. From there, just go ahead and slide the plastic forend off, and you don't really need that, so you can set that off to the side. I'm going to try to zoom in here a little bit for you. And then from there, you can go ahead and simply slide your barrel right off. And in the video in the past, I actually have a video on how to take this shotgun apart. This is the reason why I'm making another video, because before, when I first took this gun apart, you can actually unthread this, and then there's a spring in here, and you're able to take that out and to clean everything inside there. The reason why I'm making a new video is because, and it actually ended up happening to me with this 935. I'm sorry, the 930, is I took it apart on the 935 and was able to put it back in with no problems. But when I did it on my 935, I mean, there was just absolutely, it was almost impossible to put it back in, because it basically is under spring tension, so you have to press down on it and turn that in to thread it back on, because it is threaded. And so I was getting a lot of bad comments on my 935 video when I took that apart, and I didn't realize that, it's not really something you want to do. So of course, a lot of people were mad at me for doing that, because they said, "Oh, I can't get my gun back together now. Thank you very much," this and that. So I said, I better make a new video. So one thing to note is, do not take that apart. So best thing to do is just maybe get some spray cleaner and just try to clean it the best you can. The back end, however, you can take apart. It's just just under tension, and there's like a ring there, and just clean it up. And what I noticed is I did have to send this shotgun back for repair when I had the locking lug on the bolts here off. what I noticed, they might have changed the design a little bit. There used to be a metal ring that goes inside here also, with it's like beveled, and that would go in first, and then this would go in. So mine doesn't have that no more. So I don't know if they either forgot to put it in, or they changed the design on this ring maybe. But it never had a problem cycling, so obviously it's fine. So just note, if you have one, you might have a ring in there too, a steel ring also. So that bevel end will go in first, and then you put this back in here and clean this up. And you can clean the inside of here, and there's your gas portholes in there too also. So yeah, spray this down. You know, if you have some spray cleaner, that's probably the best thing to do to try to clean, you know, this up the best you can. This is obviously pretty clean because I just cleaned it about a week ago. So other than that, you know, clean your barrel like normal, how you normally would clean it. And then there's this little, I believe it's aluminum part here. You just simply slide that off, and it doesn't matter which way you put it back on, just clean it up. And then you have this plastic part that goes on, and then there's not really much you have to do for that, and clean it. And then your spring here, and let me see, yeah, and that doesn't look like there's a certain way that goes on either. That's just it just slides, that spring slides right off. Sorry if I wasn't in frame. And then this plastic piece does have a certain way it goes on. You can see where it kind of goes over the frame here, the bottom of, the receiver. So that goes to the back. And then that will just simply slide off. And then as far as to remove your bolt assembly from the receiver, best thing to do first is, you know, tilt it on a slight angle up so it doesn't, you know, come out the front here. And your charging handle here, simply, it's just detented, so just pull it straight out. And then from there you can basically slide this forward and just simply pull it straight out of the front of the gun. And there's your bolt assembly and your like carrier basically. And this just simply slides right off. And then it has this little tail portion here that actually goes into the rear of the shotgun. I'll show you later when we reinstall it. And that basically is the part that it like basically goes back and spring loads into that mechanism there. Just be careful, there is a roll pin, or it's not a roll pin, but a pin that locks this little tail piece in, and it's kind of just in there. So if you tilt it, it can slide out and fall out. So just be careful of that. And now the last thing is just your trigger group. If you're working on a 935, you know, it's two pins, and if you're doing a 930, it's just one pin. Try to get you in view here, sorry. So basically, sorry about that. Basically just go ahead and knock these two pins out here. And you might want to kind of prop the shotgun up a little bit, just slightly, just so you know, you can kind of get the pins out. I'm just using this to kind of prop it up. It's not going to hurt, it's all plastic. Actually, it's not really working out too good there. Let me see what I can do. I'll just maybe try the barrel. Obviously, I'm not the best thing you want to do. Just enough to prop it up slightly. And then just go ahead and take your punch. And I'm just, so in case you don't accidentally miss and hit your gun, just use like a soft rubber mallet. Simply going to pull those two pins out, and then your trigger assembly comes directly out. And there's not much you have to do to take this apart. If you did happen to pull the trigger and let the hammer go forward, there is like the spring, like in the trigger mechanism here, there is like a protrusion that shows you that it's cocked. If you happen to do that and the parts fall out of it, which of course it's not going to do it here, but it's basically just a spring and in that little detent part, and then a cap. And basically just that detent goes in first, and the spring and a cap. So it's real easy. I was trying to show you, but it wasn't wanting to come out, but that's alright. So other than that, that's it. You know, and then there's the rest of the guts of the shotgun there. And there's the part where that tail goes into. It's like, it just simply slides right in there. And then it's part of your spring, recoil spring assembly basically. But there's nothing more you have to do here. Just do your normal maintenance, clean the receiver up inside and everything. And other than that, that's pretty much it. Like I said, they're really easy to work on. They're not bad at all. And sorry about that. So now I'm going to go ahead and show you real quick how to reassemble it. It's kind of the same, but in a way it's a little different. What I find the easiest to reassemble it. Instead of putting the trigger mechanism back in, I'm going to go ahead and do the bolt assembly first. I'm pretty sure you can do actually the trigger mechanism and remove that before you take the bolt out, I believe. But I just do it that way. But instead of putting the trigger group in, because it's kind of a pain to try to get this tail to line up into that part there. So the best thing I found to do is to leave everything out of it. Put your bolt back onto the carrier assembly. And then, you know, go ahead and slide it through the front of the receiver. Line it up. And once it goes in, you can see how it and then you might have to push this button in here to let it slide back in, and then from there it can be a pain. Oh, not in view, sorry. It might not be easy for me to show you. I might have to do it and then but you get the idea. Just line this back up into that part that, you know, springs inside, and so it can be a little tricky to get it to line in sometimes. But alright, I got it in there. Sorry if I wasn't in view, you know, it was just a little difficult. But that's in there now, so you can kind of push on the front of the bolt face, and so that's installed in there. But again, it can come out. So the next thing you want to do is take your bolt or charging handle here, and let me get back out a little bit, and basically just push on the bolt face back a little bit, and then basically line it up to where it detents in. So now that's in, you can test it. So now it won't come out the front or nothing because the charging handle's catching it. So of course it won't lock because you need the trigger mechanism in. And then from there, all I gotta do is go ahead and put your trigger mechanism back in. And that just simply just goes in, not any really particular way, it's just real easy. And the fun part is just trying to get the pins to line up through the trigger pack. It's not hard, just can be a pain, you know, a little tricky. It's best just to kind of start one of them, find a hole on one of them, and then go. And from there you should be able to find the other one fairly easy. Once it's kind of like you found it, and go ahead and try to get the front one in. And then basically just go ahead and tap them in. And this is also why you want a soft mallet, so when you tap these pins in, you're not marring them up. So now that's installed, and you can do a function test. You see it locks back, and everything's working fine. Alright, and then you might want to just go ahead and keep it locked back so that way you can get your barrel back in easier. Excuse me. And then go ahead and slide this plastic part back in. And remember that part that has a little shelf, you know, that protrudes a little bit, that part you want towards the back of the receiver. So it kind of hooks over the bottom of the receiver, I mean. And then from there, put your spring back on, and then go ahead and put this part back on, and these two pins will slide in through the receiver itself. And this will kind of get, you know, spun around a little bit. I mean, when you start to put it back together, then you can line it back up. Then go ahead and slide this part back on. So now that's all together like that. And then go ahead, start to feed your barrel in there, and this is the part where you got to kind of move this plastic thing around to line up and kind of hold it into place just to get your barrel started in. And then once you do, and then once the barrel's installed, then this won't move, you know, won't be able to rotate. So now that's in, and then all that's left to do is put your forearm back on. And sometimes you want to hold the barrel back just to keep it back, and then simply put that back on, and you're good to go. And you don't have to get real tight on these forends. A lot of people want to crank down on them. You don't need a lot of tension. Just hand tight just until it locks, and that's it. So that's how you field strip for cleaning a Mossberg 935 or a 930. If you have any questions, feel free to comment, and thanks for watching.